Hey, love, you have clicked on the right video. I'm a certified fertility awareness educator. I've done training and schooling all about how to chart your cycles for highly effective natural birth control. And the reason why I made this video is because I get triggered every single time I click on someone's Instagram reel or TikTok video and I see someone that doesn't know what they're talking about give you misinformation or not the best, most accurate information around how you could be charting your cycles to avoid pregnancy. Here's the issue is that most people are teaching and talking about the rhythm method, this idea of counting cycle days that we know is not really effective or reliable because the timing of ovulation changes even in healthy, normal, regular cycles. So, by the way, my name is Emily, if we haven't met before. And like I already said, this is what I do. I teach women and people who menstruate how to connect to their bodies and learn to read the tangible scientific signs of their bodies, these physical signs that our body gives us, so we can know in the moment if we should be considering ourselves fertile today or not only for the application of highly effective natural birth control, but also just so we can live in tune with our cycle and have this proactive life skill of knowing how to assess our hormone health and really being able to see the way that we change over the course of the cycle and live in sync with our body. So this method is called fertility awareness method that is often confused or thought to be the same as the rhythm method, but it's different. So we're going to talk a little bit about the science of conception, of how pregnancy actually happens, and that way we can have some choice around how we want to actually manage the process of conception and avoid it without needing to be on birth control and dealing with all of the weird side effects that just maybe don't feel right for you. So, a really quick review. This is your reproductive anatomy, and this is your cervix. So, your cervix is this gorgeous neck or base of your uterus that you can touch and feel with your fingers if you want to insert them inside your body. And a quick little warning, I'm going to click to the next slide where I'm going to show you a picture of my own cervix. So here you go. This is a picture of my cervix, no paywall, no OnlyFans needed to see this beautiful, intimate part of my body for educational purposes. And you can see that on this day, this external Oz right here is open and it's making this fertile fluid. And this fertile fluid is called your cervical mucus. And this is what your body makes as it approaches the moment of ovulation. So people often say, well, sperm can live in the body for up to 5 days, which is true, but it is missing a little key piece of information, which is that sperm can live in cervical mucus for up to 5 days. So while your body is making this fertile fluid, that is when the sperm can survive because this fertile fluid feeds them and bathes them and nourishes them and keeps them alive. That is how they're able to wait for the egg. But most of the cycle, you don't make cervical mucus, meaning most of the cycle, you're infertile. This is a same way of looking at that similar piece of information, right? Which is that you've got this follicle that's developing and growing and getting closer and closer to the moment of ovulation, which is this brief 12 to 24-hour event that can only happen once per cycle. You can't like ovulate later in a cycle. That's a myth that a lot of people talk about. That's something that the human mammalian species just doesn't do. Like giraffes can do that, but just humans simply don't. So you can only have one true fertile time that pregnancy can happen per cycle. And so you'll see that when that egg is launched, if there has been sperm that have been kept alive by cervical mucus, they're going to swim all the way up through the uterus into the fallopian tube and fertilize that egg. And then that egg starts bouncing down the fallopian tube. This journey can take like up to 10 days before implantation actually occurs. And then implantation would be, I guess, when a pregnancy can start to develop. But if we can just make sure that we keep sperm out of our body during the days that we're fertile, then we won't get pregnant. So this is a way that all of this looks on a little graph. So the red days, take a guess at what those are. The start of a cycle. What do you think this is? This would be your period, right? So menstruation. And then most people in a textbook cycle are going to have a handful of dry days before their body starts making this fertile fluid, the cervical mucus that you can see represented here with the blue days and these dark blue days as well. And then once that egg is launched, once ovulation occurs, you're completely infertile, 0% chance of pregnancy for the rest of the cycle. If this is kind of surprising to you, or you're like, well, this is not what I learned growing up, are you sure this is correct? Just remember, we live in a patriarchal society that intentionally hides this empowering body literacy education from us, not because this is unscientific or misinformation. This is absolutely accurate. It's because we live within structures that don't really want women to be self-managing with agency and sovereignty, their choices around their body and choices around reproduction. And we've been sold this idea that we've got two options: be on birth control or get pregnant. But there's another option, which is understand how your body works, live in rhythm with your cycle, pay attention to the fertile fluids that you make, get intimate with your body, and you can apply this information to also avoid pregnancy. So we have this time in our cycle that I previously referred to as, like the ovulation time, but really the terminology that we use for this is the fertile wave. So this is the fertile wave in your cycle. And so this is the good stuff. This is the key piece of information that I really want you to take away from this, which is, what does charting look like? How do we do this? We learn to check for our cervical mucus, not by needing to internally insert our fingers and kind of see what's going on up there every day, but just by using toilet paper, like we are when we go to the washroom every single day, anyways, to start to wipe consciously and notice what's there. And if you notice that there's not much going on, that's okay, because remember, most of the cycle you're infertile. So most of the cycle you're not going to see much. And then the other thing we do is we take our basal body temperature. Maybe you've seen some different apps that like charge you money every month and are going to spit out some kind of reading of if you're fertile or not fertile based on your basal body temperature. Also not the best way to do it. I have a different video about that you can click and watch below here, about why apps like Natural Cycles are not reliable and don't work. That's because our basal body temperature doesn't shift before we ovulate. It doesn't tell us when we will ovulate. It tells us when our fertile time is over and done. So between these two pieces of information of wiping consciously and seeing when our cervical mucus arrived, and then noticing when our basal body temperature shifted up, then we have really reliable information between the two of that in the moment feedback about whether we are fertile or whether ovulation is over and done. So if you take a look at this chart, the fertile days of this cycle were days 11 to 19. Those were the only days in the cycle that pregnancy was possible. And outside of that, pregnancy was not possible. But just remember, this is so much bigger than just charting for birth control. It's really being able to look at this chart on a deeper level and have a clear picture of what's going on with your cycle health. And the other thing is, sometimes people say, okay, well, what's the point in doing this if I then can't have sex at the time of the cycle where I want to have sex the most? Because it is true that ovulating and being fertile does increase your libido. But my question is, what's the point in being on a form of pharmaceutical birth control that makes you not want to have sex and kills your libido? And the other thing is, intimacy and pleasure is so much more than just having a partner finish inside your body. There are so many ways that you can manage your fertile wave that are fun, right? So our sexuality is so much bigger than just giving unlimited access to our male partners. There's a lot more nuance and joy and pleasure and exploration that can be done than just defining sex and intimacy that way. But here's the other thing that I really want to come back to, which is why counting days and all of that other misinformation that you're going to see that I was talking about at the top of the video frustrates me so much, is that it's going to be different for everybody and it's going to be different cycle to cycle. So let's say that in this last chart, this person was fertile on cycle days 11 to 19. This could be the same person, this top one here. And in the next cycle, they could be fertile on days 10 to 17. So you can't be using past cycle data with the rhythm method or with phone apps that charge you to take your basal body temperature to try to guess and predict what's going on in your body today, right now. That's like looking at the weather report from last year and then doing some silly calculation math stuff to do -14 to try to figure out what the temperature is today. It's like, well, why don't you check the weather report for today? So fertility awareness method is all about in the moment connection and checking of your body for in the moment feedback about whether you should be considering yourself fertile today or not. And look at the variety of how this can look different for different people. And if you're noticing some of these codes or some of these, colors are feeling a little bit overwhelming or confusing, don't worry, I got you. There's also a free guide linked below if you want to learn the first steps of how to start charking, checking and charting your cervical mucus. Why would I offer a free guide on this? It's so simple. Everybody deserves this information. This is our birthright. This is what we should have learned when we were growing up. Everybody needs to understand how their body works so you can just move through the world with more sensual confidence and the love that comes from knowing that you're not cursed with a menstrual cycle. There's nothing embarrassing about having this incredible power of being the people on this earth that get to carry life and make babies if that's something that we want to choose to do in this lifetime. So comment below what came up for you as the most interesting fact you learned or the most interesting mindset shift that you had. And make sure, once again, to read that description below for some of the other videos and some of the other resources that I've created to help you on your learning journey.